If you've ever gotten an AP Lang essay back and then immediately started looking for the mistake, searching for the quote that didn't work, the rhetorical device you somehow missed, or the sentence where everything seemed to fall apart, you're not alone. Many strong AP Lang students are trained to look for these very problems first. They assume the issue must be the evidence, the terminology, or the way they explained the point. But very often, that's not what costs them points. What gets overlooked is the next layer of analysis, and that is part of what makes this exam so challenging. It can lower your score even when you did a lot of things right. As an AP reader, I've seen this pattern often. A student understands the passage, chooses relevant evidence, uses accurate terminology, and still doesn't earn the score they expected, which is especially confusing since nothing looks obviously wrong. The problem, though, is that while the writer may understand what the author is doing, their explanation stops just before the real analysis begins. So I'm going to help you see this and fix it. Let's start with a sentence I see every single year. Imagine you're analyzing a speech in which a speaker repeatedly uses words like we, our, and us while discussing a national problem, and you write something like, the speaker uses inclusive language to unite the audience. Now, at first, this seems reasonable. It identifies a real choice in the passage, and it shows that the writer is paying attention to the language. But when an AP reader sees a sentence like this, they often start asking questions like, why does the speaker need unity in this moment? What problem is this language trying to solve? Is the speaker reducing defensiveness by making the issue feel collective rather than accusatory? Or is he or she creating a sense of shared obligation? That's a lot of unanswered questions, and it's actually where a surprising number of AP Lang points are hiding. Now, the first sentence identifies the rhetorical choice, which is great, but identification is only the starting point. The real analysis begins when you can explain what that choice is accomplishing in this particular situation, and this is where many writers unintentionally stop short. Hi guys, my name is Dr. Whitney Costers. I have spent over 2 decades teaching English, and so I've worked with thousands of student writers. And as an AP reader, I've had the opportunity to see AP exams from a perspective that most students never get to experience. One of my favorite things about making these videos is getting to pull back the curtain on what readers are actually looking for, because sometimes a relatively small shift in how you think about the exam can completely change how you prepare for it. And the shift we're talking about today is quite big. Many writers identify a rhetorical strategy and then stop. They point out the repetition, the emotional language, the irony, imagery, diction, or the shift in tone, and then they continue on because they assume the analytical work is finished. What AP Lang often rewards, though, is the next layer underneath that observation. In fact, one of the simplest ways I can explain this is the exam often rewards the sentence after the sentence you think is analysis. So let me show you what I mean in a slightly fuller way. A student might write, the speaker uses inclusive language to unite the audience. This makes the audience feel included and helps persuade them to agree with the speaker. This is too broad because it names a general effect without explaining why that effect is needed in this particular rhetorical situation. A stronger version would continue by explaining what that unity is accomplishing. So you could write, by repeatedly using words like we, our, and us, the speaker frames the national problem as a shared responsibility rather than an accusation directed at one group. This choice reduces defensiveness, makes the audience less able to distance themselves from the issue, and encourages them to see action as a collective obligation. So notice what changed. The evidence and the rhetorical choice remained the same, but the explanation became more specific. So this second sentence is where you explain why the writer made the choice, what challenge the writer is responding to, how the audience is likely to react, or what the writer is hoping the audience will believe, question, trust, accept, resist, or reconsider as a result. Once you start looking for this second layer, you're going to see it everywhere. I mean, think about how often commentary becomes broad without us even realizing it. It's easy to write things like, this grabs the audience's attention, or this strengthens the argument. The issue with statements like these is that they could appear in almost any rhetorical analysis because they aren't tied closely enough to the specific situation unfolding in the passage before you. What you need to understand is readers are usually looking for something more precise because rhetoric always exists within a particular context. What resistance is the writer trying to overcome? What concern is he or she trying to calm? What assumption is the writer trying to challenge? What reaction is the writer hoping to create? The more specifically you can answer these questions, the stronger your analysis usually becomes, because you're no longer talking about rhetoric in the abstract. You're talking about people. And this is really what AP Lang is actually about. At first, the course can feel heavily focused on terminology in that you're learning about diction, syntax, imagery, irony, parallel structure, all of those things. So it's understandable that many students assume success comes from learning enough vocabulary. But over time, the strongest writers begin realizing that terminology was never the destination. It's just giving you a way to talk about larger questions involving audience, purpose, context, and human behavior. For instance, why does this example create trust? Or why does this framing reduce resistance? Or why does this appeal create urgency? Why does this shift in tone make the audience more willing to listen? What's interesting is this exact same issue often shows up in multiple choice questions too, because a lot of answer choices identify something that is technically true. For instance, one answer notices irony, another recognizes emotional language, one points out a shift in tone, while another accurately identifies a rhetorical strategy. The strongest answer often separates itself because it explains why the rhetorical move matters within the larger argument, which is exactly why you can understand a passage reasonably well and still miss the best answer. So when this happens, the problem isn't always comprehension. Sometimes one answer stops at observation, while another continues into purpose, which means the same habit that costs points in essays can also cost you points here. And this is one of the reasons I wanted to work with UWorld for this video. UWorld is an exam prep platform with AP-style practice questions, detailed answer explanations, study guides, video lessons, and performance analytics. And I think that combination is very useful here because the problem we've been discussing is very difficult to fix when you can't clearly see where your reasoning is breaking down. I mean, imagine spending weeks learning rhetorical devices, practicing passages, reviewing terminology, and genuinely understanding what you're reading, only to keep losing points and not fully understanding why. That's a frustrating position to be in because the problem isn't always visible from the score alone. You need a way to see the pattern behind the missed questions and not just the final result. So let's say you complete a set of AP Lang multiple choice questions and you earn a 70%. Now, most platforms are going to give you the score and which questions you missed, and maybe you review the correct answers and then you move on. But the real questions are, why did those particular questions go wrong in the first place? Was the issue audience, purpose, rhetorical function? Did you choose answers that identified something true in the passage but stopped short of explaining its significance? Or did you repeatedly recognize the rhetorical choice without fully connecting it to the writer's purpose? The fact of the matter is, a score by itself cannot answer these questions. So what I like about UWorld is that its tools work together to help uncover those answers. The AP-style question bank is going to give you repeated exposure to the kind of reasoning AP Lang rewards. And the detailed answer explanations, they don't simply tell you which answer is correct. They actually break down why the strongest answer best captures the author's purpose, audience, or rhetorical function, while other answer choices may only capture part of what's happening in the passage. This is crucial because, as I've said before, AP Lang mistakes are very subtle. You can notice the tone, recognize the strategy, and identify a true statement about a passage and still miss the right answer because you haven't fully connected that observation to the writer's larger goal. UWorld's feedback is going to help reveal that distinction. In addition, their performance analytics allow you to zoom out from individual questions and look for patterns. Perhaps 10 different missed questions all point to the same underlying issue. The pattern could be rhetorical function, purpose, audience response, or a tendency to choose answers that are accurate on the surface but incomplete in their interpretation. Once the pattern becomes visible, UWorld study guides and video lessons give you a specific place to focus your attention. So you're no longer guessing what to study. Instead, you're responding to real evidence. That's what I find so compelling about UWorld's prep materials. The platform isn't going to leave you just with a score and a vague sense that something went wrong. It's going to help turn your uncertainty into a more specific diagnosis so your next step becomes much clearer. If you're interested in exploring UWorld for yourself, you're welcome to use my code Whitney10 for 10% off, and you'll find the link and all of the details in the video description box below. So instead of trying to fix everything at once, try to focus on the kind of thinking the exam is actually asking you to strengthen, which really brings me back to the larger point of this video. The goal is never simply to identify the rhetorical move. It's to understand what that move is doing, because truly, identifying the move is the first step in giving us a way to talk about something much bigger. How writers shape what people think, feel, believe, trust, question, and do. I hope this has helped clarify AP Lang a bit for you, and I invite you to subscribe if you want AP Lang and Lit to start feeling like a skill you can actually diagnose. Because on my channel, I help you study the thinking underneath the choices writers make in AP Lang, AP Lit, and writing and literature more broadly. As always, thanks so much for joining me here today, and thank you to UWorld for sponsoring this video. Be well.